Okay, we are very happy to start the second session, which is in diversity in research assessment. And the first presenter is going to be Erin Hengel from Brunel University, who will speak about measures of research quality and diversity.
Excellent. Yes, thank you so much for inviting me today. My name is Erin Hengel. I'm at Brunel in London. And today I'll talk on the broad topic of measures in research quality and diversity, and specifically use a new study that I'm currently working on with two of my co-authors, Jennifer Doliak and Myra Monin, which is called The Golden Leap: Unveiling Gender Differences in the Matthew Effect. So this is something that's come out already earlier in the presentations by the people this morning, and that is basically the ways that we end up measuring research quality and research productivity end up playing a very important role in academic job market decisions, and also funding decisions. Yeah, I'll move that up so we can see. Increasingly, so in the UK, which is where I'm based, there are also proposals to use them, kind of a subset of some of these indicators, to allocate research funding across institutions. And actually, this is already being done in several other countries outside of the UK. So clearly, these research metrics obviously are important. That is a concern from the perspective of gender, because obviously these research metrics aren't really getting at what we're looking, the construct we're looking to get at, which is usually research quality or researcher productivity, which is kind of this undefined thing. And instead we use these proxies. And unfortunately, a lot of times these proxies are measured with error, and then that error correlates with researcher gender. So that can lead to systematic biases that end up leading to an underestimation of the quality of female-authored work, or an underappreciation of their research, or an underestimation of their research productivity. And there's actually quite a bit of studies that suggest this. So there have been, so in economics, which is where the field I'm in, which I'm most familiar with, but it's beyond economics as well. But in economics, we've had recent studies that have looked at whether women are held to higher acceptance standards at top economics journals. And we find that in general, at the very top economics journals, female authors tend to be held to a higher standard in terms of citations. So that means that conditional and acceptance female author papers end up being cited more. We also find in another study by Card, Delavigne, Funk, and Iribiri, they actually use citations even from rejected manuscripts, and they show that even without conditioning on acceptance, accepted female author paper, actually all female author papers, conditional on the actual rating given by the referee, end up being cited more, which suggests that referees are choosing, or if they were choosing according to a citation metrics, they would accept more papers by female authors. We've also we have other studies that have found that research papers tend to spend longer in peer review, conditional on eventual publication. And an issue with that, of course, is if you're spending longer in peer review, then you're obviously going to be spending more time on a single paper, leaving you with less time and resources to do new research. So that's going to result in a lower publication count. That's another way that then publication count can be a way that underestimates the productivity of female researchers. And then a kind of a big thing where we have a lot of interdisciplinary research on is the fact that women tend to be undercited. So there is a lot of evidence to suggest that journal articles written by men are less likely to cite women than they are to cite other men relative to journal articles written by women. So women are more likely to cite women relative to men, which suggests that there is an undercitation of female authored work in the entire corpus of academic research. So and that would suggest then obviously that using citations just blindly, it may lead to an underappreciation of the quality of female authored work relative to male authored work. So again, for these reasons, blindly using place of publication, number of publications, and citation counts to proxy for things like research quality, researcher productivity, or the contributions of women could end up underestimating those contributions. So what we're looking to do in this particular paper is understand better that measurement error and see whether it always exists in all circumstances with respect to citations. And perhaps, in fact, we see that it might actually disappear, or it might change over the course of the career of a researcher. So we're going to investigate how the propensity to undercite women changes over a researcher's career, and in particular, in response to a shock of publishing a paper in a highly prestigious journal. So this is what we're doing effectively is to some extent an extension of a paper in management science by Azulay, Stewart, and Wang, and they looked at the visibility Matthew effect. So the visibility Matthew effect is basically a situation in which a scientific contribution has greater visibility in the community of scientists when it is introduced by a scientist of higher rank than when it's introduced by somebody who has a lower rank, right? So they looked at that and they showed that when somebody wins a prestigious award, they get a big bump in citations to their work. Now we're going to look at that and say, okay, well, when somebody gets a prestigious publication, do they also get a big bump in citations to their work? And is there heterogeneity across author gender? So our shock in publishing is going to be whether or not it's going to be somebody's publishing in a full-length paper in what's called a top 5 economics journal. And this is the American Economic Review, Econometrica, Journal of Political Economy, Quarterly Journal of Economics, and the Review of Economic Studies. So economics is a bit peculiar in the sense that there is near universal consensus that these 5 journals are considered the hardest to get into. I'm not saying anything about the quality of the papers that they publish, just that most people understand that they are the hardest, they have the lowest acceptance rates. One is the least likely to get into these papers. It is also true that most people place a very high value on publishing in them. So there was in fact a study that came out, I think in 2014, that basically it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. They did a revealed preference analysis using survey data that they asked of economists, and then they estimated based on that survey data that economists were basically willing to give up a thumb to publish in the AER. So they're willing to give up quite a bit in order to publish in one of these journals. So the way that we do that is that we have compiled a very comprehensive database that tracks the entire corpus of research outputs and citations for every economist who published for the very first time in one of these top 5 journals between 1986 and 2015. And we obtained these data from prior research that we have that was looking at review times, as well as readability of articles, gender differences in readability of articles in top 5 publications, as well as citations. We then matched these authors to Web of Science and initially used that database to compile lists of authors pre-top 5 publications. So you need to have for each author the publications that they had prior to their top 5, because we want to look at how these already published papers, citations to them change when we have a top 5 shock. We used that initially, but then we discovered that it's not that great. It has a lot of measurement error itself. So we then we manually cross-referenced it. We basically went and got everybody's CVs, and then we manually cross-referenced these lists with the publications listed on each author's CV, basically deleting publications and adding them as required. And then based on this finalized list, we gathered the bibliographic data on each of these authors' finalized list of pre-top publications from Web of Science, which in fact is a much better source of citations data than it is on authors' publication lists. So this is just very briefly kind of shows the distribution of the authors in our sample. So we have about 3,500 authors with at least one pre-top 5 publication. Because of course, to be included in our sample, you have to have published before your first top 5 paper, and some authors haven't, right? Because we want to measure the citations your papers published before your first top 5 paper change. About 14% of these are female. Now, and the pink here are the female authors, and the blue are the male authors. And we basically see an increasing numbers of women authors over time, but we haven't really seen a very big change in the percentage of female authors. It's been a little increase, but not very much. So between 2000 and 2009, it was about 15%, and between 2010 to 2015, it had gone up to about 1.5 or about 17%.